In this video, we're going to be talking about how interdependency is a big part of the oligopoly market structure. So, changes in market structure affect behavior and outcomes. Sometimes this is called the SCP model. SCP model kind of looks like this. Think of it as an upside down triangle. And the SCP model, SCP model, has three elements. One element is market structure. That's the S part of SCP. The other one is conduct. That's the C. And the other one is performance. That's the P. SCP. And what this says is if there's any change in any one of these elements, market structure, conduct, or performance, the other two will change. But think about this for a second. Think about if you have a market structure spectrum that looks like this, perfect competition here, monopoly here, and let's say your industry is right about here. So what if some firms come into the market? Well, that's more competition, so your firm's, your industry's market structure will change. So if market structure changes, that means conduct or behavior in the industry will change, as well as performance within the industry. Now, what do we mean by conduct? Well, think about how people behave. It could be something as simple as how people dress. You know, if you ever worked in the high-tech field, you never see men wear a tie. If you work in the finance industry, a lot of people wear ties. That's a superficial example of conduct. Another less superficial example would be maybe how often does a typical firm survey their customers? How much of revenue is dedicated to research and development? These are types of conduct. And when you have more or less competition, your behavior changes. Also, performance changes. Think about this. If more people hop into the industry, that could drive down price, which means revenues could fall. That's a performance measurement, revenues. Market share is a performance measurement. Stock price, in other words, when the level of competition changes, your performance within industry changes. So this is one of the reasons why market structure is such an important concept, because if you don't know your industry's market structure, you're not going to know if it changes, which means you're not going to be aware of a change in conduct within that industry. So again, one of the more important characteristics of an oligopoly market structure compared to monopoly or perfect competition is the issue of interdependency. One firm's action causes a reaction by other firms, right? So an increase in sales on the part of one firm will be noticed immediately by another firm, and they're going to react. So increases in market share of one oligopolist may, and in many cases do, reduce the market share of other firms. For example, if you lower price to try to get sales, well, if other firms don't lower their price, you may be able to steal some of their customers. But that's not what's going to happen. They're going to also lower their price, because even though lowering price may bring new customers into the industry, you're still going to be taking some of the existing customers with that industry from another firm. And of course, they're going to retaliate. They're going to lower their own price. And if you increase your marketing, they're going to increase their marketing. If you cut their price, they're going to cut their price. So there's lots of retaliatory measures in an oligopoly market structure. Now, the one thing we're going to realize is cutting price is not a good way of getting more customers, because that's easily countered. So one method that oligopolists use is they like to do things that are not easily copied. And so what they got to do is they got to differentiate their product in a way that's not easily copied. So think about Apple, the way they design their products. They design their products, their phones, their computers in a unique way. And that design element is not easily mimicked. So that gives Apple a competitive edge. So an attempt by one oligopolist to increase its market share by cutting price will lead to a general reduction in the market price, and it will lead to a general reduction in revenues for the entire industry. And this is why oligopolists avoid getting into price wars. Now, we're going to have we're going to need a unique looking demand curve to describe oligopolistic behavior. Because we've got a bit of a problem here. Let me explain what this is. I've got this. Okay, so when we have a demand curve, demand, price, quantity. Now, what the demand curve shows us is how demand will change when you change price. So if you have a P1, you could tell me what the current demand is. It's Q1. Now, if I change price to P2, that will change demand to Q2. So you can see we're moving along this demand curve right here. Now, there are other things that matter other than price: tastes, income, advertising. What we're doing is we're assuming everything else is held constant, and the only thing that we're changing is price. Now, the problem we have is when we increase price, our rivals will not copy our price increase. That's because if we raise price and they don't, they could steal some of our customers. Now, if we want to keep everything the same except for a price change, if we lower price, they've got to do the exact same thing. In other words, if they don't copy our price increase, in order to keep everything the same, if we cut our price, they shouldn't copy us to be consistent, right? Well, that's not the case. When we lower price, rivals will copy us. So do you see how we get a bit of a problem? The one thing that we're changing is price. We're either increasing it or decreasing it. All else must remain equal or remain unchanged. Well, what about rivals' response? When we increase price, our rivals will do nothing, remain the same. But when we decrease price, our rivals will also decrease price. So can you see how our rivals will do one thing when we raise price, not copy our price change. And then when we lower price, they will copy it. So that's a bit of a problem because the demand curve has to have everything remain the same. So if our rivals don't match our price increase, they can't match our price decrease. So what we're going to do is we're going to solve this problem by combining two demand curves. Let me erase this. So this is what we're going to do. I'm going to draw a demand curve here and demand curve here. Now, these demand curves will be exactly the same but with a slight difference. This one is going to be relatively flat, and this one is going to be relatively steep. Price, price, quantity, quantity. Now, you could see here, this demand curve right here, D1, is more sensitive to price changes than D2 here. The reason why is it's flatter. So this is the demand curve where our rivals don't copy us, don't copy our price changes. If our rivals don't copy our price change, our customers will be more sensitive. If we're the only one who raises price, our customers are going to react quite strongly. If we're the only one who lowers price, our customers are going to react quite strongly. But if our rivals do copy us, we won't get such a strong response when we change price. If we increase price and everybody else increases price, we don't look that much different from anybody else. If we lower price and everybody else lowers price, again, we don't look that different from everybody else. So in terms of elasticity, the don't copy one is more elastic. The copy demand curve is inelastic. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this demand curve, I'm going to move it over here. I'm going to move it right here. And you can see here, what we're going to do is when we have those two curves meeting, let's pick a price, P, E, Q, E. When we raise price, our rivals will not, so this is the copy one, right? Copy, right? Our rivals won't copy us. So that means we're going to be moving along the don't copy line, right? If we're moving along the don't copy line, that means we don't need this top one. So let me get rid of this. It's just the top part, right? We don't need this top part right there. Now, when we lower price, our rivals will copy us because they want to protect their market share. So we move along the copy demand curve. That means we don't need this one right here, this part right here. Got this. Don't need this one right here. So you can see now we've got this kinked demand curve, bent demand curve that goes like this. And so it's really a combination of two demand curves. And more importantly, it looks like this. We've got a flatter demand curve and we've got a steeper demand curve. The flatter demand curve is when our rivals don't copy our price increase, and the steep demand curve is when they do copy it. So you can see when we raise price, we don't move to point M from A, we move to point B. And when we lower price, we don't move to point D, we move to point C. So you can see that red highlighted part is the kinked demand curve. Now this has some implications, and we're going to be discussing that in our next video.